All right, so I want to take a look at the year in review for the Broncos, and I want to compare a little bit to what they were able to do in 2019. You want to do this?
Let's do it.
All right, let's have a little bit of fun. Well, very obviously, and this is the one thing that jumps out almost immediately is the turnover margin. Right off the top. The Broncos in 2019, they were 13th. Mm-hmm. This year, dead last.
Right. They were a lot safer with the football last year. Really, that's because of the giveaways more than anything else. Now, they didn't get as many takeaways this year, but really the giveaways is heavily slanted that.
Yeah. In fact, they were actually almost equal in takeaways. Amazingly enough, they had 17 takeaways last year. They had 16 takeaways this year. But the giveaways, significant. They had 32 giveaways this year. Mm-hmm. 32 giveaways versus 16 last year.
Literally doubled it.
My goodness.
Doubled it. A part of that is Phil Lindsay doesn't turn the ball over. Melvin Gordon fumbled it a few times.
He did.
Part of that is Drew Lock throwing interceptions where he didn't do that last year. It's really a combination of those things.
Yeah, what a stark contrast. So if you want to know about where the Broncos are at and what ultimately was a part of their struggles this year, it almost immediately starts there. They were a +1 turnover margin. This year, they were -16.
Yeah.
That's a massive swing.
Yeah.
A couple other things that jump out right away. Time of possession, about the same. Didn't change too much. They were 21st this year, and they were 22nd last year, so that didn't change too much. Mm-hmm. Net yards per game, or you're a yards per play guy. You want to do yards per play?
Yeah.
Okay, yards per play, the Broncos improved by 0.2. They went from 5.0 to 5.2.
Offense was better, yeah.
It was slightly better, right. Points per game, we already know. The Broncos went up about 2.5. They went from 17.6 to 20.2.
That's they went from brutally bad to below average.
Yes, but they were 28th in both marks, so 28th across the league. So the scoring is up in general.
Right.
They went up, but they didn't move as far as their
rankings. But I'll just tell you, moving from 17 to 20 is a big deal because you move from absurdly bad to we need to improve.
Yes. They did better rushing. Okay, so last year they were 20th at 103.9 rushing yards per game. This year, 119. So they went up 16 yards, almost 17 rushing yards per game, and they were 13th. They were top half of the league in running the ball. Okay. It wasn't a thing that I thought about a lot for this team. Like, I didn't think about them as a running team, but they did have some big games on the ground.
They really did, yeah. I think some of these numbers are probably also skewed by the Kendall Hinton game. I wonder if you take that out, just how much it affects some of this stuff, because obviously that's going to throw off your passing numbers and everything else.
Oh, no question about it. Yeah, I mean, you're looking at per game kind of stuff. You know, I mean, you're
right.
It's a pretty massive donut when you only complete one pass.
Right.
Passing yards per game, 215 this year versus 194. So they actually went up. And again, if you include the Kendall Hinton thing, it went up even more. Intercepted, we already mentioned that. They had 23 interceptions this year versus last year when they only had 10.
Right.
That's got to change.
That definitely does have
Absolutely
to change.
Has to change.
One of the things that I found interesting is that 8 of those interceptions were not Drew Lock.
Mm-hmm.
Those other quarterbacks accounted for 8 interceptions.
That's a good point. Now, that doesn't mean he wouldn't have thrown interceptions if he played those games, especially early on in the year when he was throwing quite a few.
Right. But
it's something to say that this is as a team. This isn't Drew Lock's stats. These are as a team.
Right. Rippon threw 4. Driscoll threw a pair of them, and Kendall Hinton threw a pair as well.
Yep. No, it's significant. And on a team that only won 5 games, and we're pointing to reasons why, that's a big one. 23 interceptions, 8 of those obviously going to the other quarterbacks. But I thought this was kind of an interesting thing. So the Broncos last year, remember how they closed the season strong in sacks given up? They had 41 for the season, which was tied for 16th. So they're right there at the average mark. 41 sacks given up last year. Yeah.
Okay. But a lot of those were Flacco and.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, because remember they only had what? Did they have any with Drew Lock? I can't remember. I don't think they had.
Like 1, I think, sack and something like that.
It wasn't many.
Yeah.
They only allowed 32 this year. They were 13th in the league in sacks given up. So they improved. So a couple things they improved on. They improved on rushing. They improved on sacks allowed.
But here's the deal with that. Again, with the sacks, right? Drew Lock played and started 13 games, all total this year. Really, it was 12 games and a few plays, right? Jeff Driscoll started 1 game, played in 3. It was really like 2 games, right? Here's the difference. Drew Lock, in his 13 games, had 19 sacks. Jeff Driscoll, in his 2 games, had 11. Yeah, and that was the difference there. The offensive line couldn't account for the fact that Jeff Driscoll held on to the ball too long.
Yeah, it's massive. And, that was the problem with Joe Flacco, too. He'd hold on
to the ball too long.
Yeah. So 19 sacks for just Locke out of the 32 total. But
again, that's 13 games of play, or 12 total, 12 plus.
But that points to impressive offensive line play, overall.
That means you had one quarterback that was severely limiting you, and that was Jeff Driscoll.
So the other 2 stats that they improved on the offense, they improved on third down percentage, and they improved on red zone percentage. So
what areas did they get worse in this year? I mean, obviously
I'll tell you in just a second. So third down, they were 30th in the league last year at 31%. They moved up 5% in third down. It's small, but it's improvement. Red zone, last year they were 28th at 47.6. This year they moved up almost 6 to 7%, 53% and 27th. But again, scoring is up around the league. Where they got worse, okay? They got worse in passing. No, actually almost across the board, other than turnovers.
Interceptions, I don't think
everything else offensively, they showed improvement. Net yards per game, they went up 40 yards. Net yards per game, we mentioned yards per play. Points per game was up. Rushing was up. Passing was up. And the sacks allowed was down. Third down and red zone were up. So across the board, the offense improved. And my goodness, if you can curtail your turnovers, we're talking about some different numbers altogether. Okay, so that's on the offense. So, I mean, it's pretty glaring on the offense. Like, you showed improvement from 2019 to 2020. Okay, overall. Not the jumps that I think a lot of people needed, right? Not the jumps that I think a lot of people hoped would happen. But you factor in missing Cortland Sutton. You factor in intermittent injuries with your quarterbacks. You factor in the lack of offseason and preseason and really getting in rhythm as an offense heading into it. You're talking about the overall relative youth, the youngest offense in the NFL. I mean, inconsistencies were going to happen, but there were improvements.
Right. The offense was better. I think people forget how awful it was to watch the offense last year. We like Rich Scangarello as a person, but that offense was disjointed. It had a quarterback that would hold the ball too long. Flacco had lost it. Allen wasn't capable. You know, it was just brutally bad. And it came alive when Drew Lock got out there. The offense really kind of did, but we didn't get a strong enough sample to, probably keep Rich Scangarello's job. And you look at the offense this year, they were able to move the ball. Now, they turned it over way too often, but they were able to move the football. And so, I think people kind of forget that. If Drew Lock can just eliminate the turnovers, and if you look over the final 6 games, I mean, you can really see a dramatic upshift as the offense kind of crystallized for him as he kind of started to get it. I think you bring in a Nick Foles and you run it back, and you see what you've got. And if Drew Lock's able to take that job by the horns and make everybody think that, hey, I'm the franchise guy next year, so be it. And if he's not, well, then you're going to be in a position to blow it up and get a guy like that in the offseason.